So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 4, Text 19. Is that correct? So I'll just do the Sanskrit and then jump into the translation. Bhuvi bhaumani bhutani yatha yanti apayanti cha nayamatma tataiteshu viparyeti yathaiva bhu. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. In this world, we can see that pots, dolls, and other products of the earth appear, break, and then disappear, mixing with the earth. Similarly, the bodies of all conditioned living entities are annihilated, but the living entities, like the earth itself, are unchanging and never annihilated. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Purport. Although Kamsa is described as a demon, he had good knowledge of the affairs of Atma Tattva, the truth of the self. 5,000 years ago, there were kings like Kamsa, who is described as an asura, but he was better than modern politicians and diplomats who have no knowledge about Atma Tattva. As stated in the Vedas, Asango Hyam Purusha, the spirit soul has no connection with the changes of the material body. The body undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, sustenance, byproducts, dwindling, and then annihilation. But the soul undergoes no such changes. Even after the annihilation of a particular bodily form, the original source of the bodily elements does not change. The living entity enjoys the material body, which appears and disappears. But the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, remain the same. The example given here is that pots and dolls are produced from the earth, and when broken or destroyed, they mingle with their original ingredients. In any case, the source of supply remains the same. As already discussed, the body is made according to the desires of the soul. The soul desires, and thus the body is formed. Krishna therefore says in Bhagavad Gita 1861, Ishvara sarva bhutanam vrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Neither the super soul, Paramatma, nor the individual soul changes its original spiritual identity. The Atma does not undergo birth, death, or changes like the body. Therefore, a Vedic aphorism says, Asango Hyam Purushaha. Although the soul is conditioned within this material world, he has no connections with the changes of the material body. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I beg for blessings of all senior devotees, starting with Adipurusha Prabhu and all the assembled devotees, to bless this reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, just a quick history. We're in chapter 4 of the 10th canto. And so far, what's been happening is Kamsa and Devaki, as you all know, are in prison. First 6 children of Devaki and Kamsa are murdered by Kamsa. First 6 children of Devaki are murdered by Kamsa, and the 7th child is a miscarriage. 8th child is then Krishna, who is transferred to Vrindavan on request of Krishna, and you know how the story goes. That the gates all open, and then Vasudeva carries baby Krishna and then brings the daughter of Yashoda, and then comes back to the prison cell, and automatically the doors, everything get locked back. Vasudeva is again back in shackles, and when the baby cries, the guards wake up and they hear the sounds of the baby crying, and then they go wake up. They call Kamsa. So in the previous purports, the Acharya explained that the guards are like watchdogs. Sometimes you see in India and other places there are stray dogs. I recently learned even in Texas there are a lot of stray dogs on the streets. So the Acharyas explained that sometimes stray dogs on the street, they just bark upon any sounds they hear, they start barking, and they take it upon themselves to make sure that they're guarding the place. So the guards of the prison of Devaki and Vasudeva are compared to watchdogs who've taken it upon themselves to sort of be the guards. Actually, it's the material energy, Durga Devi, who's like the warden, sort of, so to speak, of this prison, material prison. So then they go and bring Kamsa, and Kamsa then comes and he's trying to sort of snatch the baby, and Devaki is holding on to the baby and crying like a poor woman. Again, the Acharyas explained, it said that it's like a poor woman, but she's not a poor woman because she's given birth to Krishna. So how can she be a poor woman? But it said it's like a poor woman because after all, she's a woman and a mother. So snatching of any baby is painful to witness. So she realizes that it's not exactly her baby, it's Yashoda's baby, but still she's holding on to the baby because it's such a painful thing to witness, seeing any baby's death. So she's crying, really. So it said like a poor woman. It's not that she is a poor woman, but like a poor woman, she's crying. But then still, Kamsa snatches the baby, and as we've been reading, Kamsa snatches the baby and is about to smash the baby onto the rock. And then the baby slips out of Kamsa's hand, and then flies up in the air, and then manifests a Durga form of 8 arms, and then chastises Kamsa, saying, "You fool, the baby that's meant to kill you has already been born, it's somewhere else." And then Kamsa, when he sees this, he's just blown away. He's just like, wow, my sister has given birth to Durga Devi. It's like, just blows his mind. Imagine you find out your sibling, your either brother or sister is the father or mother of Durga. How would that change your perception towards your sibling? You would start seeing your sibling in a different sense. Like, wow, they're like sister, like mother of Durga Devi or father of Durga. So then his whole attitude now changes towards Devaki, his sister. So it's funny that until then, Devaki was pleading and begging, and Kamsa was merciless. He was absolutely ruthless and merciless. And Devaki is pleading, please spare this child. And she uses different tactics. The Acharyas explain that Devaki, being a Kshatriya woman, Kshatriya is like a warrior class. After all, she's a Kshatriya woman. And Kshatriyas are expert in administration, warfare, diplomacy, and things like that. That's the duty of a king, to engage in diplomacy, negotiations, and things like that. So it said that Devaki engages in different tactics to negotiate with Kamsa. So it said that the first is Dhamma, which is sort of like repression or resistance. She's trying to resist Kamsa snatching away the baby. She's trying to resist that. And then is Sama. Basically, she's trying to sort of flatter him, compromise him. So first she says, no, please spare this child. You're cruel and things like that. And then she tries to flatter him, saying, please, out of your magnanimity, I hope you would, spare this child. And then the last is Dana. She's asking for a charity. Please, just make this one gift, offer this child as a gift to me. So in any kind of political negotiations, we can see these 3 steps can be employed. First is you try to resist, and then you try to sort of make some kind of a deal, negotiate, you flatter the opponent. And then after you flatter, then you try to ask for some kind of a charity. Okay, well, how about you just do this little thing for me? So like this, Devaki tries to use all kinds of diplomacy and Kshatriya skills to convince Kamsa. But then after Kamsa sort of realizes that it's actually Durga Devi, that's a baby, then his whole tactic now changes and he realizes like, oops, he sort of realizes his mistake. And then he becomes really remorseful, and he goes through different phases of remorse. First is like self-blame. He says, oh, I'm so wretched. I'm like a Rakshasa eating his own baby. And then he says, I'm so merciless. I don't know which planet I'm going to go to. I'll go to hell. And he's going through this phases of repentance. And then he says that he tries to blame Providence, says, oh, it's cruel Providence. I believe the omens, and even Providence lies. Now he's trying to put the blame game on, it wasn't me. It was the Akashvani that tricked me. So he tries to put the blame on Providence. And then he says, okay, it's the children's own misfortunes. Sorry, too bad, it's your karma. It's your bad karma. So he's saying it's the children's own misfortune due to which they're suffering. And then he gets into some philosophy. It's really interesting. Now, the section of Bhagavatam we're in, like the past few verses, including this verse, is philosophy. Kamsa philosophizing. So Kamsa is now using some philosophies to sort of extricate his position, to sort of like slowly take a step back and like, oops, he's trying to sort of walk out of the situation, bow out of the situation. But he uses philosophy, and not any philosophy. He uses actually really sound philosophy. If you see, what Kamsa states is not just like a layman philosophy. It's actually really steeped in the Vedic paradigm. He actually makes a strong, profound statements. So in this verse, if I may read the translation again, so he's trying to justify his position, and he's trying to console Devaki and Vasudev. And he says, in this world, we can see that pots, dolls, and other products of the earth appear, break, and then disappear, mixing with the earth. Similarly, the bodies of all conditioned living entities are annihilated. But the living entities, like the earth itself, are unchanging and never annihilated. And Prabhupada adds in the translation, Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So pretty interesting that Kamsa uses this to sort of console. And actually, if you see, this is really similar to what Krishna is saying in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Now he's trying to sort of give some pep talk to Arjuna to get up and get him to do his duty. So Krishna is trying to elevate him to different phases. First, he talks about the soul. He says that you're not the body or the soul. He talks about the qualities of the soul. How the body, like Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, who's the dean of, I think, the Bhakti Vedanta Vidya Peeth in GEV. And he comes up with these beautiful Bhagavad Subodhini and Gita Subodhini, and he comes up with really catchy phrases. He says, summarizing the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says, the soul is ever alive and the body is never alive. That's how he summarizes the few statements of starting from Hanna Hanyama Hanyat. What is that verse? 220. What's the start? Does anybody know how it starts? 220.
Yeah.
First thing is,
No. If you can tell me,
seeing God as food. The next one is anima, seeing God as spirit. The next one. That one?
Najayate, thank you. Yes. Najayate mrite na vakayati na yam bhutva na bhavito na ajo nityam shashvato yam purano na hanyate hanyamani sharire. So the last line is what Prabhupada quotes, na hanyate hanyamani sharire. So Krishna is saying the same thing to Arjuna. Actually, the soul is eternal. You're thinking that you're killing the soul. You're actually killing the body, not the soul. The soul is eternal. And then he says, even if you think that the symptoms of life, if you think the body and the soul are the same, and you're killing life itself. Then he says that this body comes into manifestation, exists for a while, and then it becomes unmanifest again. So what need is there for lamentation? If it's anyway going to be destroyed. Even if you think that the body is the life itself, then what need is there? Either way, there's no need for lamentation. So like this, Krishna sort of takes Arjuna through different, he elevates Arjuna's consciousness and he gives different kinds of instructions. So we see Kamsa sort of speaking pretty much the same philosophy. He's trying to sort of justify his position. And actually he borrows this from Sankhya. A lot of what Kamsa says is really comes from the Sankhya philosophy. As you guys might know, there are 6 schools of philosophy. There's like a Sankhya, there's Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Karma, Mimamsa, Vedanta, and what is the 6th one? Karma. Yoga, yes. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And each one of them is propounded by a particular sage. So Sankhya literally means to count or catalog. You're basically cataloging everything in the material world. One way to try to reach the supreme is to first put aside everything that's material. If you know everything that is material and you know what is not God, then you can then think about what is God. So Sankhya is basically trying to catalog all material elements, and it's really painstakingly, they actually catalog every single material element and they try to analyze, or in other words, just metaphysics. Even in philosophy, there is like this line of metaphysics. So Sankhya is like this metaphysics. So in Sankhya, actually, they go through all these analysis of material elements. So actually, what you see, what Kamsa is saying in this verse, this is actually borrowed from Chandogya Upanishad. So there is actually a sage, Udalaka, who's speaking to his son, Shweta Ketu, in Chandogya Upanishad. And in instructing to his son, this sage is actually saying that he gives us example of either gold or earth. He says just like there's a gold ore, I don't know what they call it, a reservoir of gold on like gold mines. So just like from a gold mine, you take some gold and you sort of shape it into different ornaments, either earrings, necklaces, and so on. So it comes from the gold mine. And then you take it and then you sort of shape it into some temporary form, like necklaces, earrings, and so on. It exists and you give it a name. This is a earring, this is a necklace, and so on. Gold bangles or whatever. And it exists for some time, and then after it's sort of no longer in use and it's destroyed it again, sort of merges back to the gold ore, gold mine. Or like from earth, basically, from earth comes clay. And then from that clay, then you sort of use that clay to create clay pots, for those of you who've been to India, clay pots are not so common here. But in India, they use clay pots, which is really eco-friendly. Now it's coming back in fad, it's really being used now. So clay pots, you sort of create clay pots from clay. So it exists for some time, and after it's no longer in use, you can sort of dissolve it back to clay and again reuse it. So the sage in Chandogya Upanishad says, Udalaka is telling his son that just like you see, clay pots come to existence, it's given a name and again goes back. So he says that actually clay pots are not the absolute reality. It's the clay, the reservoir of clay or earth, that's the absolute reality. Why is that? Because see, the concept of truth is really complex in Vedic scriptures. Reality, basically, if you see even mathematics, right? What is true? What is truth? What is the understanding of truth? Scientifically, if you say, by the way, feel free to unmute for our online audience if anybody wants to jump in. What is truth as per scientific laws? How do you define truth? Like you say, 2 + 2 is 4. That is true, right? That's a true statement. What does that mean? What is truth? And how does that correlate with our Vedic understanding of absolute truth? Yes, Adi Purusha.
In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says what's real is eternal.
Brilliant, brilliant. What is real is eternal. Adi Purusha Prabhu says, what is real is eternal.
Krishna said that.
Krishna says that. Adi Purusha Prabhu is saying that. Krishna is saying that what is eternal is true. And in our comments, Krishna Daya Prabhu is saying that which can be verified. Is that in response to this question, Prabhu? That which can be verified is true?
Yeah, you said 2 + 2 = 4. So if it can be verified or proved, so then mathematics assumes that it is correct. Yeah.
So the Prabhu is saying what can be verified is, is the absolute truth. So the definition of true is really connected with time. What that means is 2 plus 2 is 4 10,000 years ago. 2 plus 2 is 4 now, and 2 plus 2 will be 4 in 10,000 years or 5,000 years later. Then that means it is true. Anything that stands the test of time is known as true. So just like Adi Purusha Prabhu really brilliantly said, that which is eternal, meaning that which stands the test of time.
Absolute truth and relative truth.
Adi Purusha Prabhu saying, there's absolute truth and there's relative truth. Yeah. So here, say Ujjalaka is instructing his son that actually clay pots, they're like Adi Purusha Prabhu was saying, it's relative truth. It's not the absolute truth, because it was unmanifest before, it's now in manifest stage now, and after some point it'll be unmanifest again. So he's saying that the clay or earth is the main reservoir. Just like that, here in this verse, Kamsa is now using that philosophy to say that the body is actually just a relative truth. It was not always in existence. It has come into existence, but now it will again sort of merge back to where it came from. The body is made of the 5 elements, the Pancha Mahabhutani, earth, water, whatever elements the body is made of. After death, it'll again merge back. Either the body's burned or buried or whatever, it disintegrates and then merges back. So Kamsa is trying to say that the soul is eternal, the body is just temporary. So it's interesting that even ancient philosophers, even outside the Vedic paradigms, to some extent understood this. Like if you see in Greek mythology, there was this Greek king, Theseus. I don't know if anybody heard of Greek king Theseus. So the legend has it that this Greek king Theseus set on an expedition or set on sailing to conquer the land of Crete. And he came across these minotaurs, or these strange creatures with the head of a bull and a body of a man. Just like we see the BBT art, you see this person with the head of a bull trying to kill a person who has a body of a bull but a head of a man. The karma, the cycle of karma. You remember that BBT art? It's a graphic. If I had that, I would show. So anyway, so Minotaur is this mythical creature with the head of a bull and body of a human, and he goes and he slays that, and then he comes victorious, comes back sailing on that ship, and he's like a local hero in Athens. And then after he passes away, they save that ship as a memorabilia, and that's known as the ship of Theseus. And to sort of signify his conquest, his heroic deed, he came back victorious. So now the interesting thing is, even after he passed away, the ship was sort of preserved. But then over time, what happened was slowly certain planks or certain parts of the ship would disintegrate. And as it disintegrates, they would replace that with newer parts. If one plank breaks, then they would remove that and replace that with another plank. And this way they would keep on replacing certain planks. So my question to all of you is, if they replace certain planks, is it still the same ship of Theseus that he came in? Again, feel free to unmute, or has it changed? Nobody? Anybody?
You can't step in the same river twice.
I was thinking of the same. Adi Purusha Prabhu was saying, you can't step in the same river twice. So you might say, okay, someone might say that, it's still the same ship. He sailed in the same ship. You just take one plank out and you put another plank. But what if you go on replacing to such an extent that all the planks in the original ship are gone? And now the ship, as we see it, has completely new parts. The sail, the planks, whatever, oars, everything is now new. You sort of replace over time such that the ship has now brand new parts. So then the philosophers then question, then, is this ship really the ship of Theseus? So this is known as a paradox of the ship of Theseus. Can it be considered the exact same ship? So over time, many philosophers have debated. There's a lot of complex arguments and analysis. Is this really? Some say it is, some say it's not. And if you say it's not the ship of Theseus, then at what point it stopped being the ship of Theseus? when you change the first plank, did that change at that point? Or maybe 50% of its original parts were gone. At that point, did it stop being the ship of Theseus? Or when all the planks were gone, was it at that point that it stopped being ship of Theseus? So anyway, this is like an interesting paradox, because our body is like that ship of Theseus. Our cells are constantly dying. So then which body is really our body? Which body is really our body? So it's hard to understand. So that's the same philosophy that Kamsa is trying to use to justify his position, that actually, just like clay pots come into existence, they're temporary, and then they merge back to this source. So like that, he's trying to sort of say, he's trying to use his, and it's interesting, like we were discussing, how Kamsa is actually coming up with interesting philosophy. In which other instance do you see an asuric person of an asuric mindset? I hate to use this word demon, but a person who's demoniac mindset actually uses brilliant philosophy. Can you think of any other instance in the Bhagavatam where an asuric person, we have Andrea and Krishnadaya Prabhu coming up with their answer. Hiranyakashipu, yes, that's the one. So if you see, I think in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Hiranyakashipu's brother is killed by Varahadev. By the way, I'll stop in a few minutes and then we can open up for reflection. So Hiranyakashipu's brother Hiranyaksha is killed by Varahadev, and Hiranyakashipu is really bitter by this. But then at the same time, he has this responsibility as the head of the family. So his Hiranyaksha's wife, nephews, his mother, everybody's crying and grieving, and Hiranyakashipu is trying to console them. And as he's consoling them, he again comes up with brilliant philosophical points. And if you read that section of the Bhagavatam, you're like, wow, Hiranyakashipu knows much, much better. He's more realized than me. At least I think that. Maybe you guys are really self-realized, but at least when I read that section, I'm like, wow, Kamsa and Hiranyakashipu, they're way more self-realized than I am. I have such a long way to go. So in that philosophical presentation, Hiranyakashipu actually says that, just like travelers, when you're traveling, especially in olden times, when travelers are traveling and you come across a certain reservoir of water, either a well or a lake, travelers come and stop, they drink some water, and then they have some small exchange with each other. Where you're coming from and so on. And then after that short stay is done, they all move on to their respective destinations. So he's saying, just like travelers converge at a point, of resting place. Prabhupada translates that as a restaurant, for us to understand. Or like a hotel or whatever that is, travelers come and they meet with each other for a short time and they interact, and then they are taken by destiny, by providence. They're brought together. They stay in touch for a short time, and they're now separated by time. So Hiranyakashipu is trying to console them, like what we know as body, kinsmen, family. For a short time, we're brought together by destiny. We recognize as family or whatever, friends. And then after our time is done, then destiny sort of separates us. So what's the point in grieving? And then he says like this, according to a fruit of activities, the soul keeps transmigrating. It's put in a certain body, undergoes a certain experience, and he's trying to console how the soul is different from the body, and the soul is eternal. And because of the misuse of our independence, the soul is basically obliged, put in a certain material body, and obliged to act a certain way. And as per our karmic trail, we enjoy either higher or lower species in life, heavenly or lower. Like this, he comes up with brilliant analysis. And then he gives another story. He gives a story of Suyagya in Ushinara. Ushinara, by the way, sounds like Japanese, right? Ushinara. So he says, he talks about a king called Suyagya in his place of, maybe it was in Japan, who knows? Maybe this king in a place called Ushinara. He gives this example that this king was really valorous, chivalrous king, was fighting in a battle, but unfortunately he comes to his end in this battle, and as he's dying, he's falling down, he's biting his lip in valor to show people how brave he is. Even as he's dying, he's sort of biting his lip and showing his teeth, sort of to show his bravery. He's dying. See, that's the mentality of a person who's still attached to bodily concept He's still concerned of what people will think as he's dying. So he's trying to make a good impression of to people. See, I'm so brave. I'm biting my lip. I'm showing my teeth as I'm dying. And as he's dead, he dies in that position of showing his teeth and grinning and showing his bravery. And his family members, his wives, his children are all lamenting. And at that point, as they're lamenting, Yamaraj, hearing the cries, comes in the form of a young boy to sort of console them. And this young boy comes and he asks his family members, what's going on? Why are you guys grieving? And the wives say, oh, he's gone. Our husband, he's gone. And the boy says, what do you mean he's gone? He's right here. See, he's in front of you. And the wife says that you don't understand, kid. He's gone, Then the kid says, who's gone? He says, the soul is, Then the kid says, see, that which you think is gone, you never saw that, your whole life you've been interacting with this body and the body is here. So why do you lament? You never saw that thing which is left. The soul, that which you feel, you never saw that soul to begin with. Your whole life you were just dealing with this body. So then why lament? If you've never concerned with the soul, you're always concerned with the body. So here's the body. Why are you crying? And then the wives, they realize, okay, yeah. So this way, we hear even Hiranyakashipu sort of giving this example of how, like giving spiritual theses of spiritual life. So I'll conclude this one point and then we can have some discussion. But now, was Kamsa just justified? Kamsa is using this philosophy. Is he justified to kill? Like a short yes or no answer, yeah.
Yeah, Prabhupada calls this word jugglery.
Word jugglery.
Talking so much philosophy, just like Arjuna spoke philosophy, but it misses the entire point. On the subject of contrition, which is happening. Oh, well, I didn't really do it. Oh, it was destiny. Oh, it's not the body, And then we've had some classes where they're talking about, was he really sorry that he did something wrong?
Yeah.
Was he really sorry that he did something wrong? Or was he just trying to avoid the reaction to the sin? Was his contrition because he didn't want to suffer because he did something wrong? But the point is.
By the online audience, can you guys hear Adi Purusha Prabhu? Okay, yeah, we can hear you.
The point is, there's a prayer called the act of contrition. Act of contrition. You've heard that?
No.
It says, Lord, first line clears this whole thing up. Lord, I'm heartily sorry for having offended you. I regret my misdeeds because I dread the loss of heaven and the pains of hell. But most of all, I regret because I've offended you who are worthy of all my love. Because the Bhagavatam class is about Krishna.
Yeah.
About glorifying Krishna and about our relationship with Krishna. And real contrition is not just to avoid the reaction to sinful activity. Real contrition is not just, oh, I did something wrong. Maybe I did something that Krishna was not happy about. So if we miss that point, no matter how many rational judgments and logistics, and it's all just word jugglery and it's just smoke.
So you're saying Kamsa was basically not sincere. He was just...
whether or not he was sincere, what are we going to do?
Right.
We make
okay,
mistakes.
So my question is this way. Basically, so Kamsa is not justified just by using philosophy. You're not, just because the body is temporary. Now the question is then what about Arjuna? Then why is he then being asked to kill? The same thing, right? Now, Kamsa should not kill just because you can use philosophy to kill. But now Arjuna, the same point. Now,
Krishna says to Arjuna, fight for me. Abandon all desire for gain and safety. Do this for me.
Okay.
If we're not doing it for someone, or we're not sorry that we might have offended someone, then it's just running around in mental circles and it's just superficial.
Yeah.
There's without devotional service, the Bhagavatam says, what's the use of severe austerities? What's the use of the power of speech? What's the use of control of the mind, control of the senses? If it's Samsadir Haritoshana means if it pleases Krishna, that makes it perfect. And if it doesn't please Krishna, no matter how you dress it up.
Yeah. What about our online audience? Like any thoughts of is it justified? Because now on one side we're saying that Kamsa is not justified just by using the philosophy. But then the same thing now Krishna is asked to do what Kamsa shouldn't, sorry, Arjuna is asked to do what Kamsa shouldn't be doing. So, yes.
Yes, I posted in the chat as Adipurusha Prabhu was telling. So what is the point behind whatever we do? So the point is like Kamsa is doing for his self-protection, but Arjuna is doing on behalf of Krishna, on behalf of Dharma, basically. So that is the perception difference, and then that matters the most.
Exactly. So it's doing it for selfish reason or for Krishna's. Like the example given is like, let's say someone is listed in the army, they've been dispatched to some foreign lands to fight a war, and then he kills one of the army, like the opposing army members, and he's given a medal. He comes back and he's given a badge of honor, a medal. He's like a war hero. But then he goes back home, and then he shoots his neighbor. Will he be given a medal? Because the difference is, one, first instance he acted on behalf of the government. Second instance, he's acting for his own purpose, then he's held responsible. So that's the difference between Arjuna and Kamsa. Another point I wanted to add, and I'd also like to hear from those who haven't spoken, is this is so common even in our times. All of our reading Shastra. I forget who said, you read the Bible, I read day, you read night. I forget that quote. But we all read the Shastra, but then we all see it from the lens of our own false ego. We'll only see the things that supports our position. Someone is into prasadam, they'll collect all quotes of prasadam. Someone is into dancing, they'll collect all quotes of dancing. Someone is into this or that. We all read Shastra from our own perspective, especially now that we have so many books available, Gaudiya Vaishnava literature, so many translations from Bengali and Sanskrit into English. Now we can read books without studying under the guidance of senior devotees, like we have Adipurusha Prabhu here, who's always guiding us in every Bhagavatam class. Now we have in our ISKCON, we can read all these books without necessarily taking shelter of senior devotees. We can just read on our own. And just like Kamsa, we can use shlokas. We can just keep mastering shloka after another, keep pumping out all the shlokas. To sort of, especially in shloka wars, the more shlokas you quote, the more chances of you being victorious. So I'd like to hear some thoughts of how do we overcome this, of reading Shastra and using Shastra for our own purposes, like Kamsa is doing. We have some comments saying from Piyush Prabhu, he said, we read Bible day and night, you read black and I read white. Thank you. Yes, that's the word, that's a quote by William Blake. That's what I was referring to. So yeah, we run this risk of sort of using Shastra and reading from the lens of our own perspective. And Bhima Prabhu made a comment saying, okay, he said the same thing. Bhima Prabhu says, both read the Bible day and night, you read black while I read white. Even Satan quotes from scripture. So yeah, Jamuna Jaya, is that a comment? I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to say to your question, how do we, because you're right, you could pick up any book at any time and have so many misinterpretations, but that's why we say not just Shastras, we guru and sadhu, to go to classes and to listen to other people. And someone once asked me and said, if Krishna appeared in front of you, would you know him? And I said, I'm so flawed, I couldn't trust myself, but I know people who would know, and I would go to them. And whenever these sorts of things, it's like, I may not know because I'm an idiot, but I know people who do know. And so when we're reading these things, that's why we have the guidance, to go to these people. And as you said, we're so lucky. Like, how fortunate are we that we have senior devotees around us all the time, and we have Prabhupada's books, and we have our gurus to lead us. So that's why I said, yeah, I could read a book, but I could totally get it wrong. But luckily, there are great souls that I know to turn to. So I wanted to say that. Hare Krishna, thank you for a great class.
Thank you. Brilliant. The point is, I may not be able to recognize, but I know people who can. Any other? Bhima Prabhu. Brilliant class yesterday, by the way. It was just amazing. Just nectar. I can keep hearing that again and again.
Haribo, your class as well, very thought-provoking. I think we would do good to understand that, as Prabhupada said, it's all based on desire, and it's all based on sincerity. Just be sincere. Very two simple things. It's all based on desire and your sincerity. Of course, the stronger your desire, the more sincere you will be. And that will reveal to us within scripture and within our everyday life that which Krishna chooses to reveal to us. So to use Jamuna Jaya's example, Krishna, will you know Krishna? Well, you will know Krishna if you want to know Krishna. But if, let's say, you're like Duryodhana or have elements or even just a small touch of Duryodhana about us, then Krishna will not appear as Krishna. Prabhupada one time was giving a lecture, and there was hardly anybody there, and the devotees apologized to Prabhupada. In the auditorium, there was only like, I don't know, less than a dozen people, and it was a huge couple thousand seat auditorium. And they said, oh, Prabhupada, nobody showed. And he goes, what, you didn't see? Narada Muni was there, Brahma was there, etc., etc. And he started naming off all the demigods. And are we to say that he was just making that up, or was perhaps Prabhupada's consciousness so clear to realize that when he spoke about Krishna, that all the demigods were present? So it is about our consciousness, our sincerity, and our desire, which reveals the truth between the white, in between the lines, or the lines themselves within Shastra. Hare Krishna. Wonderful class, by the way. I love to listen to you. You're so philosophical. You're like an ancient Greek philosopher.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Any other last thoughts for, unless we see someone who has
If you are
spoken?
mentioning the lotus feet of the spiritual master is the only way to obtain pure devotional service.
Mm.
If we think we can jump over Guru to Krishna, it's a big mistake, because we please Krishna by pleasing Guru. And if we don't have Guru, it means we don't want Guru, or we think there's only Krishna and then there's me. And then you're just basically impersonal, Mayavad. They say accept the spiritual master, then, when you learn something, then you reject him. No, birth after birth, the only criteria I have for what I'm doing is okay, is if it pleases my spiritual master, and that pleases Krishna more than anything.
Mm. Wonderful.
I want to
Yeah.
mention Guru.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master, as we say.
The only
Guru
way to
and
obtain
pure devotional.
service. There's devotional service, but then there's pure devotional service.
Yeah. So that's, I think, what's the missing link for Kamsa. He's reading scripture without the shelter of a guru, or his gurus are his ministers who keep advising, giving ill advice. So it's not only important to have like a guru, but also like a bona fide guru.
Who are you doing it for?
Yeah.
When you say, how can I serve you? And he gives you a prescribed duty.
Yeah. And
then when you do it, you say, how is this? And if he says, nice, good, well done, my good and faithful servant. That's it. It's a pretty simple way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other last points? Yes, William. I see a hand raised. That want to share something? Or I'm not sure if that was by accident.
No, it was on purpose. I was just having some difficulty. In the beginning, when you were going through the class and you asked, what is truth? Was that the question?
Yeah. How do you define truth? Yeah.
So every time I come to class, I see truth because I see Krishna in the devotees. When I was younger, I used to go through different religions looking for truth. And I don't want to talk too long, but in the Bible, it says God is love, right? And Jesus Christ says, by this you will know that they are my disciples, if they have love among themselves.
Mm.
And I see it with Krishna's devotees. So Krishna is love and Krishna is truth.
Thank you. That's a nice way to recognize truth. Where there's love. Yeah. At that point. Any other last concluding thoughts? Any other points?
Beautiful class, Godruma Prabhu. And thank you so much for letting the devotees speak. It's so wonderful. And then the devotees, thank you very much for speaking. I really like to point how it's not just Guru Sadhu Shastra. It's the lotus feet of the Guru and then Sadhu Shastra. I liked it. Thank you very much. Very nice detail. Bhima Prabhu, where are you going? Where are you running? The Krishna?
I'm dancing on my grave.
Okay. Bhima Prabhu is a poet. This is a poet. Oh. Okay, we can take one more burning question.
Anything on the chat?
Let me see.
I asked one question in the chat. I posted one in between the class.
What is it?
You were
Prakata Lila? Aprakata Lila?
yeah, you said if something manifests and unmanifests, so that may not be the truth. But so we have this Lord's pastimes, prakata, aprakata, so and things. So can you just connect them, please.
You're saying that I said the truth is that which stands the test of time, and you're saying how does that connect with aprakat and prakat lila?
Yeah, later you use the word if it should manifest throughout. So that's what you said. So that's
Yeah, I was using that in connection with that line from Chandogya Upanishad where clay pots are made from clay, and it exists for some time. It's been given a name, some designation, and then it dissolves back to clay. So the clay pot is like a relative truth, as Adi Purusha Prabhu nicely put. And the clay or earth is the absolute in one sense. Of course, even the earth is temporary. You know, the material creation is also temporary. It goes back to the force of Mahavishnu. But that example is used to illustrate the difference between the body and the soul, you know. So something has a relative existence and something has an absolute existence. So Krishna is trying to draw the same point in Bhagavad Gita. The body has a relative existence, or the soul has an absolute existence. It's never, does not come into being, does not sort of, I mean, I forget the wording, does not come into being, having being, nor does it, I forget the exact translation, but basically it's not created, it's not, it doesn't die. Yeah.
Never was there a time when you did not
Exists.
memorize all these things. Where in the future where any of us seems to be. Yeah.
Yes, that's yeah, exactly. But now your question is, how is that connected with the Krishna's Prakat and Prakat Leela?
Yeah, sometimes they manifest and sometimes they don't manifest. Of course, they're Nitya Leela, but I'm a little bit, yeah, maybe you can shed some light on it. So,
of course, Krishna's pastimes are not material. So we are sort of now talking about something that's spiritual, which is manifest. And an example is given like just like the sun. You know, so sun rises from the east and we can see the sun. And then when the sun sets, it doesn't mean that the sun stops, you know. The sun is just absent from our vision. So my understanding is this aprakat leela is just that it's absent from our vision, not that it's subject to sort of, you know, like a dormancy or something. It's just absent from our vision. Yeah. Whereas the example given in Chandogya Upanishad is more like something being in a dormant stage. So that's, from what I understand, that's the difference between the aprakat prakat and anyway, so that's the end of the class.
Thank you.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Godruma Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Good seeing you. Good seeing you.